Winter had descended over the city with relentless cruelty that night when a family conflict exploded, forever transforming the fate of several people. In the center of the storm was a sick boy, who needed care and heat, but found only the coldness of a hardened heart. "Take your monster and disappear from my life," were the words that echoed as a sentence without appeal. And so, a mother, with her feverish son in his arms, was expelled to the street, where the thermometer marked 30 degrees below zero. Good night, listeners. I am Andre Branco, and you are on The Blood Ties. Today I bring you a story that will mess with your emotions and make you reflect on the limits of love and hatred within a family. Get ready to dive into this narrative that life, in its cruel irony, has made with strands of pain and resilience. Savalivna Chicken, at age 62, carried with him the weight of an existence that had denied her justice in her view. Widowed and bitter, his only bond with the world were the son Dennis and Nora Christina, along with grandson Artem, just 2 years old. But it was precisely in this young woman that she put all the blame for her misfortunes. Christina, a serene and balanced bank box, had become the favorite target of mother-in-law's resentment. The apartment, recorded in the name of Chicken, was his favorite weapon. "This house is mine, and you live here for my goodwill," he repeated as a mantra while turning her daughter-in-law routine into a true Calvary. Dennis, trucker who spent more time on the roads than at home, was barely able to interfere. Meanwhile, Savalivna Chicken found pretexts to humiliate Christina: the poorly washed dishes, the food that was never on the spot, the grandson's cry that, she said, was Mimimi's exaggeration. Until that cold December arrived, when Artem got sick severely. The fever climbed and descended, the boy struggled between coughs and moans, and Christina spent clear nights, applying compresses and managing medicines. But none of this mattered to the chicken, who came home already with short wick: a discussion at the clinic, the lack of a drug in the pharmacy, and now I had to put up with the child's cry. Seeing Christina packing Artem, red and panting, the mother-in-law had no mercy. "Again this scene. He spent all day on the bench and can't even silence a child. Artem has a high fever. I think we need to call an ambulance," tried Christina, with a trembling voice. The answer was a direct blow. "Ambulance? And who will pay for it? Me? For your bastard." The words hurt like knives, but Christina swallowed the cry. I was used to the attacks, but that day Chicken seemed to have even more intense hatred. "Enough. I'm sick of playing you three. Dennis at least brings some money from time to time, but you? You earn some change and think you send it here? Who paid this house for 30 years? Who shook the renovation? They live at my expense as parasites." Christina tried to argue, but was interrupted. I can't take this scream anymore, not even your mother's sensitivity. Take your crippled and disappear from my life. It leaks to your mother's house, and never come back." Without giving chance to replicas, Chicken began to throw the grandson's clothes in a plastic bag, ignoring Christina's desperate appeals. She knew that when the mother-in-law entered that state, there was no possible dialogue. Half an hour later, he was on the staircase of the building, with Artem burning fever in his arms and 2 bags with his belongings. The door closed with a crash, and the key turned in the lock. The only refuge now was the house of his mother, Ludmila, across the city. With a tight heart, Christina called a taxi, involving the child in a blanket. Ludmila, retired nurse who lived in a very modest apartment, asked no questions. He welcomed his daughter and grandson, and together they called a doctor, who diagnosed acute bronchitis. Dennis only learned about 3 days later, when he returned from travel. Desperate, he ran to his mother-in-law's house, asking for forgiveness, promising to talk to his mother. But Christina was irreducible. "I don't go back there. Never again." She called our monster son, played a sick child in the cold. That was awesome. The husband was divided between his wife and mother. Chicken, in turn, remained uncompromising: "That this snake creeps wherever you want, but here it does not put your feet." Meanwhile, Christina entered the divorce papers. Ludmila's tiny apartment was not ideal for 3 people, but the grandmother didn't complain. He shared his lean nurse with his daughter and grandson without hesitation. A month passed. Christina, unable to take unpaid license, returned to work in the bank, leaving Artem in the mother's care. The boy recovered, being active and smiling, but never asked the other grandmother. It was in a grey January, during an exhaustive day at the bank, that Christina came across a family figure. Savalivna Chicken, impeccably dressed as always, approached her window with her passport and retired wallet in hand. "My retirement," he said, without even lifting his eyes. Christina felt a knot in her throat, but kept her professional posture. When consulting the system, however, information surprised her. "Your retirement is blocked." "What do you mean blocked?" Galinha reacted, finally looking into the eyes of his ex-Nora. "By judicial determination. There is an order for retention of alimony in favor of a minor." The mother-in-law paled. "What pension? What are you talking about?" Christina explained, in a firm voice. "A bailiff has forwarded the order. His son Dennis is required to pay 25% of his income to maintain Artem. As he has no formal employment, the court appealed to the income of family members who reside with him." "What family members?" asked Galinha, the hoarse voice. "You." "It is registered at the same address and divides expenses with it. By law, when the debtor has no proven income, the goods and income of family members living under the same roof can be used to pay off the debt." Chicken clung to the counter, feeling the floor disappeared. His retirement was 28,000 rubles, his only livelihood. How much will they discount?" 7,000 per month. "The rest you can withdraw." "This is impossible. You can't live with 21,000. Christina, impassive, replied, "Questions about execution must be resolved with bailiffs. I have no authority to change this. It can withdraw the available value." Chicken signed the papers with trembling hands. He knew that 21,000 barely could pay the bills and buy the essentials. What if you get ready a job? Then the discounts will leave his salary," Christina explained, without looking at her in her eyes. The mother-in-law took the money and went to the exit, dragging the steps. Before leaving, he looked back, but Christina already served another client, as if nothing had happened. Galina sat at the kitchen table for hours, counting and retelling her remaining notes. He had always lived with modesty, but losing 7,000 a month was a demolishing blow. Worse, those discounts would extend to the age of Artem, 16 years of monthly bleeding. In the evening, he dialed the child's number with still trembling hands of anger. "What did you do, you idiot?" he raged as soon as Dennis answered. "Because of you, now they discount alimony of my retirement." On the other side, the son of his son sounded down, almost childish. "Christina filed the process after divorce, mother. Money. In the papers, I'm unemployed. So get a real job." Galin shouted, the sharp words like knives. "That discourages you, not me." But it was late. Dennis tried to register as a driver in a carrier, but the offer was derived, 30,000 per month, all in the clear, half of what he earned before, underrated and without rights. A week later, Galina returned to the bank. This time, he avoided Christina's window, but her colleague was at lunch. There was no choice, he had to face the line to his ex-Nora. "Christina," murmured, the voice failing. "I'm in office," he said, without lifting his eyes from the papers. "What's the matter?" The food. Couldn't you withdraw the process?" Christina finally looked at her, the cold look like steel. "They are for the support of your grandson. Even though you called a monster a month ago." The flushing rose through the Galin neck. Behind her, the impatient line coughed, murmured. I rushed. You know how I am." "No, I don't know," Christina cut. "Next." Galina tried to wait for her after work, but the security guard approached her with firm education. "You need to leave, please." At home, Dennis was waiting for her, her shrugs, her face marked by tiredness. "Mom, I'm going to get Christina and Artem back. I can't stand it anymore. The family is over because of their attitudes. And who will pay the food? Her," she said, bitter. "I'm going to get a formal job. I'll pay myself. Enough of this nightmare." Galina knew there was no way out. The 7,000 would continue to leave her retirement until her son regularized his situation. But when Dennis called Christina, the answer was a wall. "It's late, Dennis. We already filed the papers in the notary's office. In a month, the divorce leaves." I rented an apartment. The Artem is in the school near home. We rebuilt our life without you. And the family. A son needs the father, he despaired. I needed, corrected Christina, dry. When your mother threw my sick son on the street, calling him aberration, I understood that family for you was just a concept. There's you have your little mother, and we have us. And we choose to live far away. Dennis insisted for weeks, but Christina only gave in at one point. He allowed him to see Artem on weekends. 2 years passed. Galina learned to live with mutilated retirement, but every trip to the bank was a silent torture. Christina kept a professional courtesy, never a more gesture, never a look that was not calculated. Dennis, in turn, strictly fulfilled the obligations. He worked as a driver in a logistics company, with a formal contract, and deposited the pension. On Saturdays, he sought the sun. Artem grew healthy, smiling, but never wondered for her grandmother. Until one day, in the bank, an incident broke the ice. An elderly man began to scream with Christina because of a transfer rate, shaking his arms, calling her thief, incompetent. Galina, in line, saw her ex-Nora pale, her fingers squeezing the pen tightly. What are you doing with this girl? I intervened, the firm voice despite the years. She is not to blame for the bank's rules. The man turned to her, but security was already approaching. The conflict was contained in seconds, but Christina looked at Galina with something new in her eyes, not gratitude, not forgiveness, but a cautious surprise. At the end of the hours, for the first time in 2 years, Christina approached her on the sidewalk. Thank you, he said simple. Galina shrugged. Nonsense. The man was a rude. They were silent for a long time, until the question escaped, and the Artem? How is it? Christina hesitated, but replied, well, growing up. Next year comes in school. Dennis said you will get married again. The other raised an eyebrow, surprised by the guideline. I'm meeting someone. A good man. Treats Artem as a son. Galina nodded, her fingers playing with the bag of her bag. I'm sorry, Christina. That night. I lost my head. It shouldn't have spoken that way of the boy. He was not to blame. Christina sighed, looking at the floor. It's been a long time, Galina. I forgave you for years. Hate tires, and life is short. But we can't be as before, it gives. No. Some things break all over. But. She paused. If you want, you can see Artem. Just don't hurt him again. I swear not. I even have a gift for him. A wooden horse I bought for a long time. Saturday, both, in Parque da Vitoria, near the fountains. Dennis takes him there. But if you start any discussion in front of the child, it's over. I promise. The following Saturday, Galina arrived at the park with a large box in her arms. Artem, now higher, was slow to recognize her. But when she opened the box and revealed the carved wooden horse, with bright wheels, the boy approached, shy. Is it to me? For you, my grandson. I bought a long time ago, but I never had a chance to give. Dennis watched tense, but the scene passed at peace. Artem pushed the horse through the lane, laughing, while Galina accompanied him in silence, his damp eyes. Over time, those monthly meetings became routine. Galina took toys, sweets, but what really mattered was to be there, near the grandson who almost lost. Christina really married with Mikhail, a quiet engineer who legally adopted Artem. The boy began to use his stepfather's last name, but never failed to see his father or grandmother. Dennis paid every penny of the pension until his son's 18 years. When the installments finally ceased, Galina recovered the full value of her retirement, but had already learned to live with less. Now she saved to give her grandson. Artem became a young educated, intelligent. I studied programming at the university, had ties with Dennis, with Mikhail, with Galin. From that winter night that he was expelled from home, sick and small, he had no memory. But the scar remained in all the others. Years later, at Artem's wedding, Galina sat on a remote table. Christina approached during the reception, a glass of wine in her hand. Thank you for coming. For him, that means a lot. He's my grandson. How wouldn't it come? There was a break. You know, sometimes I think, if you hadn't put us out that winter, maybe everything was worse. I would still be stuck in that apartment, in constant fights. Artem would grow in this poison. Galina lowered her eyes. Or maybe it was better, if I had been wiser. Bitaya. The past doesn't come back, Christina said soft. But it rejoices that, by Arsham, we found a way. Me too. Both observed the groom, radiant, dancing with his wife. You knew. Christina muttered suddenly, I still work on that bank. I remember the day you knew about food. Your face. It was as if the world had collapsed. Galina smiled, bitter. Got it. And for a moment, between the brightness of the cups and the laughter of the guests, the two women, once enemies, now joined by something larger than resentment, understood that some ruins can flowery. True, admitted Galina Savalievna, with a sigh that seemed to carry decades of regret. I lost everything. The son, the daughter-in-law, the grandson, and all because of my own stubbornness, my blind anger. Christina shook her head, her eyes shining with wisdom that only those who have already carried the weight of hatred know. Not everything, Galina. Look around you. A discreet gesture towards the hall, where Artem, now a man made, danced with his wife, his eyes looking for hers between the crowd, the affectionate smile as he called her from Babulia. Did you allow this? It could have banned, closed the door forever. Galina felt the knot in her throat. It could, he murmured. But it didn't do it, added Christina, her lips bowing in. A serene smile. Because anger, my face, is like a stone we tie in our neck. Early or later, or let it out, or sink with it. The words hovered in the air, light as the smoke of the cigars that still danced between the tables. Later, when the last note of the orchestra went out and the guests dispersed like petals in the wind, Galina Savalievna sat in the rear seat of the taxi, the trembling hands over the leather bag spent. Through the windows, the city was going on blurred lights, the same city who, years earlier, had witnessed his pride disintegrate like ice under the winter sun. That cold night had been a divider. He lost a family, yes, but he gained something that anger could never give him, the cruel clarity of those who look back and understand. The words, she now knew, were knives with no cable. They cut those who cast them as much as who received them. And forgiveness. Ah, forgiveness was a rare diamond, more valuable than any inheritance, any dacha by the lake. At 78, his apartment was echoed with the silence of those who live alone, but not lonely. Arsham called every week, the hot voice like fresh tea. Babulia, did you eat today? Once a month, he and his wife appeared with homemade pies and work stories, filling the empty rooms with no longer forced laughs. Even Dennis sometimes knocked on his door, clumsy, as always, but present. And Christina? Well, Christina greeted her on the bench, a head nod accompanied by a how is, Galina Savalievna. Formal, but with a heat that only those who knew the ice recognize. Life, he found, was a relentless teacher. His lessons hurt, yes, but they were fair. And the largest of all? That time heals nothing, only teaches us how to carry scars more lightly. The trick was to learn before it was late. And for the first time in years, Galina Savalievna felt that perhaps he had agreed.